So today I get to speak with Elliot Kay. Now Elliot is a very experienced speaker, spoken on stages all across the world, big audiences, as well as small intimate audiences as well. Actually, I've actually known Elliot for a very long time, and I was indeed there probably at the very start of his career, being one of just a handful of people in the audience, maybe another 20 people or so in the audience. And I know just a few days ago, Elliot was in front of 24,000 people. So I've seen a little bit of Elliot's huge growth during that journey. And one thing that Elliot raises, which I think is a really valid point, and something I hadn't even occurred to me beforehand, that a traditional business that was coming into the office, working with their colleagues every day, are now having to embrace tools like Zoom and other sort of distant communication tools that rely on video and speaking to communicate. And so everybody is going to need to up their game in that area to perform well, to do their duties, to perform their jobs. Even if, and it talks about this from a manager's perspective, but also as an employee's perspective, and both points are very valid. We talk also about the fear factor. I personally, there are environments where I'm not comfortable speaking. I get nervous and kind of resist those environments. And Elliot talks a little bit about quite a lot of different areas, but then kind of distills that down into two key points that we can use. And I know from my little bit of experience that they do really help us deal with that kind of fear factor. So I think that's really valuable on its own. Anyway, I think you'll really get a lot from this. I hope you do. Let's dive into the interview. Let's go. So you might have heard this question before. So let's start at the obvious place. Why is speaking such a valuable tool?
Well, I have had that question before, and the question is always, with what's going on right now in the world, is speaking a priority? Speaking isn't a priority, and I'm like, you are insane. Right now, speaking should be the priority, because if you're on Zoom, you're speaking. If you're doing webinars, you're speaking. If you're doing lives, you're speaking. If you're doing YouTube videos, you're speaking. So now is more than ever, speaking is prevalent. And what has changed is the means we deliver it on. That's what's changed. Yes, you need a mic. Yes, you need a camera, but you're speaking, you're communicating. And right now it's essential that you do a great job of it, because so many people do a terrible job of it. You need to really transmit your personality, your charisma, your communication through a lens and a mic now. So if anything, it's magnified. And right now is the time to use speaking, because people are hungry for hope. They're hungry for direction. They're hungry for guidance. They're hungry for content. Right now, content's king and content's cash. Remember that, content's king and content's cash.
Nice.
And they're hungry for that. So if you're not using speaking right now, if you're not using Zoom or Microsoft Windows or Google Hangout or whatever you want to use, then you're going to get left behind. And that's the reality. If you think things are going to go back to normal, they just will not. They will not. It's been embedded in our lives now for 3 months. More and more companies are thinking virtually, even more now. So if you speak to clients on a regular basis through Zoom, guess what? You're speaking. It's a form of talking. It's communication. It's speaking. If you pitch via Zoom or via camera, you're talking, you're speaking, you're communicating. So you're slightly insane if you think speaking isn't important right now.
Okay, so I think you're in favour of speaking then. So I'm assuming if we were having this meeting 3, 4, 6 months, even a couple of years ago, people would have said something similar, right? But if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is because of the recent, pandemic, even companies, even businesses that perhaps had never considered it before, perhaps should take this opportunity, or I'm not sure that's the right word, revisit this, and maybe now's the time to embrace it, even if they wasn't doing so before.
Absolutely. I think through lack of choice, it happened to everybody, but now it's happened. It's got people to review and really look at how to move forward. So I was speaking to some of the words with a really big gaming company, and they're really assessing the need for offices. Although they will have offices, then they're assessing the need to have so many people in the office, because if anything's been proven in the last few months, actually how companies can function without a physical building. And I think with where the economy is going, a lot of companies will be thinking twice about renewing rent and getting a physical location. Then they have to figure out digital leadership, digital resilience, digital mental health for their staff and employees. And of course, like the lunch and learns and all the stuff they would have done for their teams, they have to figure out how to incorporate that to keep the momentum and the company culture alive. That's a different conversation. That's a different podcast for Simon.
Sure.
For you to do with someone who's an expert on that, not with me.
Okay. So that's, I think you've raised a really interesting point. I want to kind of explore a bit deeper there. So let's say a company hasn't been using a lot of speaking before. They had an orthodox company. People turn up the office every day. They do their group huddles, their Monday morning meetings, etc., etc. Is the skill of speaking different? Do you use different tools when you're speaking to an audience over this medium? And one of the reasons I'm asking this question, I'm thinking, I'm not an actor, right? Mm-hmm. But as I understand it, an actor will speak differently if they're on camera for a movie than they will say in the theatre, where they need to project their voice, and they actually use slightly different skills and a slightly different resonance. So is there a different, perhaps someone's very skilled at motivating their team face to face. Is it a slightly different skill?
It's a good question you raised there. So I think, first of all, I want to qualify something, that speaking isn't acting. Acting is stepping into a character, playing a character, and actually the great speakers or the people that you're speaking effectively to grow their business are people that are present to using speaking, and they are authentically themselves, and they are communicating themselves. So I really don't like speakers who put on a speaker's mask and they're like, hey, I'm a speaker, and they put on this pretend personality. Real good, effective speaking, if you're going to enroll people to buy in your brand, your products, then actually being more of yourself is more important. So let me just say that on one point. If someone's very good at motivating the team and inspiring the team and leading the team, that will come through on a camera. That will come through a mic. Your personality, your leadership, your guidance will still happen. Okay, you need to encourage engagement more, and that's where the chat box comes in. That's where giving people the space to express themselves. That's when having rules and setup. When you set up the call, there's certain rules you need to, just put in place. You have to give the structure of how to communicate with each other, because you can't look at each other's eyes as easily anymore and pick up. You can't read the energy. I mean, there's a really interesting point that, when Martin Luther King came out with his speech, Have a Dream, many other people there were other preachers around, there are other people giving the same message. But why was Martin Luther King so powerful, so impactful? Is because he very carefully thought of the language, and the language being relatable, which is why he enrolled so many people and he managed to gather momentum where others failed. Simon Sinek does a really interesting TED Talk about this. So it's the same. If you want to maintain engagement, if you want to keep that motivation, that inspiration, it's very much about the language you use when you are speaking on camera and mic. You might need to adapt it more. You might need to make it more inclusive so people can easily relate. But what is key for you to maintaining the motivation, inspiration, and leadership is the interaction and the engagement with people on the call. We are inundated with information. That's just the reality. So adding the Zoom or adding the kind of camera and mic is another form we're going to consume information. You need to keep that charisma, that engagement. You need to keep them talking, keep them speaking, keep them typing. And that's how you'll keep that team motivated. And of course, what you might need to tweak is how you explain things.
Okay, explain that. Go into a bit more detail there. What do you mean?
So we learn in 3 different ways, right? So we learn visually, auditory, or kinesthetically. And that's just like we always have a lead of that. Yes, we're all 3, but a lot of us learn in different ways. So the visual people, they need the slides, they need the pictures, they need to see things. The auditory people, they need to hear things, they need to hear them well. So often you can find the auditory people very quickly because they go, I can't quite hear you. I can't, and they want to hear every word. And the kinesthetic
it shows up in the language a lot, right?
Yeah, you can hear it literally. The people that go, I hear what you're saying, auditory. The people I see what you're saying, visual. And then you've got the people that feel what you're saying. And those are the kinesthetic. They're like, yo, bro, I feel you. Yeah. And those are the kinesthetic people. And kinesthetic people need to touch and feel things. So those are the people that come to your house and touch all your statues and play with your frames and touch the plants. And they learn by doing. So you need to make sure you're catering for all those different learners to keep them engaged online. You need to make sure they're typing, you need to make sure they can see, and you need to make sure they can hear. That's another key aspect of you being an effective communicator and you being able to enroll people. And so when you are speaking and where you are doing your daily huddle and you're inspiring your team, it's to be aware of these different learners, because while we were face to face and, you know, the auditory people could hear you well and the visual people could see what you were saying and the kinesthetic could get a feel for you, that's not quite there in the same way, which is why, you know, throw in some pictures for the visual people. You know, obviously auditory people will listen anyway, and then make sure that the people kinesthetic, they're typing, they're doing something for them to stay engaged. And that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, got it. And I guess, I mean, we're talking a little bit there really from a manager's role. And I imagine there's going to be particularly, well, there's going to be managers that excel through this. Either they need to adapt or they embrace it and they excel, and others that perhaps don't. Same's going to be true for employees as well. You know, I imagine I can think of right now some developers that actually struggle in a kind of physical environment and kind of stay a little bit quiet, and they probably prefer the more remote experience. And if they're given the microphone and say, okay, and I'm just going to use a random name, so I'm not picking on anybody, you know, John, you know, let's hear from you. What's the update? They may actually respond to that environment better. So I guess it's going to, like any kind of big change, I don't want to oversimplify it, but you're going to get some winners and some losers, not just at business level, but at individual level, employees, etc. as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reality we face. And I think with where economies across the world are going, I think that you need to upskill yourself so you become invaluable. You need to make sure you need to remove as many obstacles as possible. So when management is sitting there going, okay, this sucks, but we need to let go of a bunch of people, you're up to date, you know how to do things, your updates are great, your work's great, you know, and so you become really hard to let go of. Those who they're going to let go of are the guys who haven't moved with it. That's going to be the easy decision. The guys who haven't moved with it, they really struggle with the daily calls online, they seem disengaged, we've lost them. Okay, well, let's just cut the losses. So if you move with the time, if you're a developer and you're an introvert and you're happy with your headphones and your Red Bulls and the darkness while you type as a developer, you know, for 18 hours at a time, then just become really savvy with communicating and become really good at that. So they're like, no, his updates are spot on, his delivery is spot on, you know, they're spot on, you know, and then it's very hard to let go of you.
Yeah, good point. And, you know, video and speaking, and even if it is just audio, it's obviously way more personal. There's a lot more personality that comes across in that sort of form of communication versus an email, obviously, or versus a slideshow, etc. And do you think that is at the heart of it? Is it the fact that we have, you know, an ever increasing quantity of bombardment of messages, companies all wrestling for our attention, and is that what is the sort of decider? Is the personality bit? Because I'm always is this anthropomorphism, if I'm probably saying that incorrectly, which is the tendency for humans to instill a human quality in something that's not human. So yeah, so we might perceive an object as having a personality, you know, a cartoon being an obvious example. We can cry at Bambi or whatever because we add human emotions. Even a car, you know, it's designed with headlights to represent eyes, etc. So it seems to me that humans are looking for personality in almost everything. And the Japanese believe that every object has a soul, which is probably the most extreme version of that. So do you think it's the personality that's the heart of this sort of desire for video and speaking?
Yeah, I think personality is a massive part. Feeling connected, feeling that they're the only person in the room, that you're speaking directly to them, is a big part of it. If you look at the rise of avatars right now, that a lot of you know, big companies are using avatars to connect with their customers, and that's exactly what you're talking about. you know, Wendy's use it effectively. I think, you know, there's an avatar on Instagram that's got 2.2 million followers. Calvin Klein
Wow.
used them in their promotion of their one of their collections. And the reason that's being brought in is to humanize things, but it still has that distance that you're not dealing with human emotions. So it's a very clever concept. So, and people they make friends with Wendy's avatar, and they'll talk to Wendy's avatar, and they'll respond to her questions, and they'll complain to Wendy, and then Wendy will deal with that. You know, Wendy's avatar, sorry, and from Wendy's Burgers, right? So I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on. So even in the emails or the videos, you know, if you think of the emails that you look at, right, the ones you do look at, because we all get hundreds a day.
Yes.
It's the one that personally speak to you. It's the one that feel like they're addressing you, and it's not a mass mail out. And that goes far more than just personalizing the name. You and I know that. It's the same with videos, and it's the same with lives, and it's the same with online communication, or, you know, interactive communication, as it's going to be moved to in terms of a terminology, because people find online distance versus interactive and live. It's being felt like you're being spoken to as an individual, that there's a connection, and the person on the other side cares for you, and of course is adding value. And more consumerism, you know, I'm meeting the point of value and experience, if you look at it. So again, one of the big trends for 2020, for those who speak a lot and want speaking gigs, is around the intersection of experience and value. So, you know, Amazon couldn't survive on its old model where it was just emails. They had to integrate customer service. They had to integrate a greater experience to the person buying. There's a reason why suddenly Facebook rushed to emphasize groups a lot more, because they were realizing people were fed up of the toxicity of news feeds. And they wanted to, I mean, actually a lot more smaller apps are coming out which protect your data and allow people to have a safe experience, place to connect. So, you know, people are looking for that value and not a number. You know, I don't think people are happy being a number anymore. Oh, it's cheap, and, you know, that's fine. Actually, they want a great experience as well, a great experience of buying. So it's the same. I want a great experience if I'm going to tune into your webinar. I want a great experience. I want to feel connected to. I want to feel like you're calling my name out, that you're making me feel special, even if there are 100 people on the call or on the Zoom. And I think that's where, and it's going to carry on. It's just going to get more and more. You know, PayPal had to evolve and introduce a voice. Ryanair in the UK had to add customer service because people crave the experience. It wasn't good enough that you could fly for £10 anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, experience is such a massive topic. It's a little bit of a tangent, but one example that does come to my mind, I think it's called Build a Bear. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but I think it was a phenomenal product kind of re-engineering. They used to make teddy bears, and then, you know, everyone makes teddy bears. It was a commodity, and they were fighting, you know, in this sort of very old market. And I'm not sure who the CEO, I think it was a lady, come up with this idea that the you know, the customer would come in and build the bear. So they would, I don't know exactly, I've not actually experienced it myself, but you kind of pick the size of the bear, you pick the stuffing, you pick the clothing, and you see the bear come to life. And they charge, you know, 3 times the price of a normal bear, and you've got to build it yourself. So it's like
beer,
double whammy.
wow.
Yeah.
And they get beer with it. That's awesome.
that's the follow-on. That's the adult version.
Beer and bear. See,
beer and bear. That could work.
That could work. Yeah.
Put Dad in the corner with a beer. So yeah, and it's all about experience. And of course, you know, you can if you can provide an experience, then you can sell that for, you know, a lot more than just the core components. Another bit I want to sort of go on to talk about, you know, being authentic, being yourself, but there's a challenge of that as well. As we are using these channels to speak to, you know, we're talking one-to-one now, but, you know, we're going to allow other people to see this. So we're often talking to the masses, for want of a better expression. You know, do you find that you need to kind of moderate your language? And I'm probably going to behave differently with a bunch of guys down the pub watching football than I am Sunday lunch with my mum, for example. So there's you know, we aren't just one person, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's an interesting question, because it's very hard to give a one directional answer.
Mm.
And I think a lot of it comes down to your identity and who you identify yourself as, and who are you as a brand. You know, if you take some people like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins, it's like, this is who I am, this is how I do it. I don't change for anyone. Fact. I just don't. Like, this is what you're buying. This is what you're buying into. Hate it, love it, whatever. I don't care. This is me. I make $100 million a year, or Tony Robbins a lot more. You know, I don't have to change for nobody. And then you've got the ones that want to be more personable and want to, you know, I'm not saying they're not personal, by the way, but, you know, they want,
Yes, yes.
it's a different approach where they adapt according to who they're speaking in front of, because they want to reach in a different way. They want to enroll in a different way. So you can, I think what people really like is consistency. You know, what I used to get when I did my big Power to Succeed seminars, back in the day when I was the coach with the hat, you remember those days, you know,
Yeah.
people loved that I was the same off stage than I was on stage. People really like that. People don't like it when you're like this outgoing speaker and then you get off stage, you won't speak to anyone and you're this introvert. Unless you've qualified that, unless you've explained yourself to your market, your audience, there's nothing worse than admiring someone, being a fan of someone, and coming to the day where you meet them and you're disappointed because there's a huge mismatch between the person that they identify themselves to be and the person they are. So it's really hard to kind of give like, here's the answer to that. I think it's an awareness of how you want to come across, be consistent with that, and know that however you do it, you'll get judged anyway, and people will love you and hate you, and just be consistent with it. I think, you know, most influencers, people that are disrupting industries and things like that, they're going, this is how I am. Like, I'm not changing. Like, Elon Musk will not be curved. Like, he's, no matter how much the media come down on him, he's not going to change what he has to say, whether it be about a guy in a cave or whether it'll be going to space. Like, that's his opinion. Same with Gary. Same with the big Simon. You're going to tell Simon Sinek to chill out and to stop, you know, no, he's going to, no, this is me, you know, what? So I think it's really about how the persona and the identity you want to build yourself when you're integrating speaking as your marketing strategy. Go on.
And for you personally, because I think there'll be certainly a lot of people, and it's something that's occurred to me as well. People, sometimes are nervous about speaking, and I think one of the reasons is that we do get judged, and if you put stuff out, let's say it via a YouTube channel or some other sort of widely distributed channel, then chances are if you get a few views, you're gonna somehow piss off somebody somewhere in some corner, and they might shout about it, and that can be, honestly, it's not a fun feeling for anybody. So you personally, do you feel, I'm just going to speak the way I do, and when it happens, you just brush it off and move on with your day? Or do you find you are moderating and being a little bit more self-aware of your language? I mean, you're an experienced speaker, so I imagine there's some there.
Yeah, I think I am aware. On Sunday, I was giving a talk in front of a Pakistani audience, and I'm aware that they're very deeply rooted in Islamic values. So I was extra cautious, like not to in any way stand on them, or, I think you do moderate, especially when you're using speaking to grow a business, when you're using speaking to enroll clients and customers. I think you probably moderate more than if you're an influencer, if you're like, I've got 1 million followers and this is me and this is what got me there. I do moderate. I do watch my language, also because I'm terrible at spelling because of my dyslexia. So what I put out there does go through filters to make sure it reads right. But when I speak, I'm aware. I look at the audience. I want to make sure they get the most out of it. I'm not a typically sweary guy anyway. We don't swear a lot. So if I do, either there's a reason for it, or you've really annoyed me, like really annoyed me. So I think, but if it happens again, what I do is I look and listen to what's coming at me. So, we're running a massive campaign right now on Instagram and Facebook on one of our workshops. And some guy put some silly comment like, number 1, this advert sucks. Number 2, you suck. Number 3, I'm out. Like, okay, that's just a delete. That's just, you're an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But then if there's a genuine kind of like cry out there, there's a genuine like, hey, here's my, like, they give genuine kind of feedback, even if it's harsh and you can read
Mm.
between the lines, actually they're saying it because you care. Then I might choose to respond. But again, I'll take that offline very quickly. I won't like engage in a huge argument, because if they're looking for it online, then I know what they're looking for, and I'm just not going to give it to them, and then I'll just delete or block them. But if they're like, look, I heard what you said on Simon's podcast, and I really wanted to say this to you, and da 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 da. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Because really, what people are doing when they're doing that is they want to be heard, and you provide a platform for them to be heard. You could also turn someone into a raving fan because they won't expect that. They'll expect you to go, F you, get the hell out of here, and go, do you know what? Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to take time out to listen. They'll be like, what? And sometimes I will scare people. Oh, no, it's okay. I was just having a bad day. I was just having a bad day. There's an interesting podcast. I can't remember the guy. He's done a TED Talk, but it's Why Do You Hate Me? Have you heard of it?
No.
And he's a young millennial. He's gay, and he did a lot of sort of unboxing YouTubes. Like he would unbox American history, and he'd got a lot of hate, and he would unbox like all kinds of things. The gun culture. He was quite sarcastic, but very well done. So of course you get loads of terrible comments. And what he did then, he would then click on the person's profile, read about them, then reach out to them and say, look, I want to understand why you hate me. And he record it and turn this into a podcast. Now, of course, those who were willing to come on, but by the time they came on, pretty much most of them would be like, yeah, sorry about that. I'm quite embarrassed. I said, I hope you all gay people die and get shot, or you should be hung. I was just having a really bad day, and you at the end of it. He's very clever. He's not leading them. He's not trapping them. He's literally having a conversation. You do that, you instantly diffuse the situation, right? That person, and you're giving them a platform to really express themselves, then you're creating a conversation. And then after that, you'll probably find you have an acquaintance. I don't know if you have a best friend.
Yeah.
So it
But
is
I
about
can
weighing
get
things
that.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And actually, I mean, I think that's a great example. I'm looking forward to kind of checking that out a little bit more, because I imagine, and I'm slightly guessing here, their goal is to, raise awareness, etc., and that actually provides a great vehicle to kind of change some of the preconceptions and do exactly what their higher goal is. So that's awesome. So that brings us over nicely into channels, right? Because there are, of course, many channels, and new social media channels being built almost daily, it seems like. So as a business guy that uses his, as a coach and as a speaker, what channels to use that you like? Is there any channels that you have dumped that for whatever reason you've not got on with, or you didn't feel the challenge was beneficial as a business sort of element?
I mean, obviously, Facebook we use a lot for the Facebook ads, and we're going to be launching our Facebook community soon. That's
Cool.
something that I've grappled with, only mainly because my business partner left the business and I was doing so many other things. So we will have the group. We do have a group, 2,500 people, but it's had zero use, to be honest. So Facebook these days is a must. We've started to use Instagram because that appeals to a certain demographic, to a certain potential audience.
That's quite a young demographic, right? Instagram.
Yeah, but it's also kind of the people that are starting out in speaking seem to find us. So we're having a presence there. And of course, LinkedIn is where we have, again, we're going to have more of a presence. We're going to dial that up. The other ones right now, just, I don't see I don't use them a great deal. I mean, we've got Twitter for Speaker Express, but we've also got, I myself personally got Twitter. It's got 10,000 followers. I don't use it consistently. I don't see the return. I don't see the engagement, so I don't give it much attention. Pinterest, like, I think that might work when I release my 4th book. I might have a presence on Pinterest because, of course, when you pin things, it doesn't go anywhere versus new feeds where everything fades. YouTube, I release content monthly. Again, I just put it up there. It doesn't have a lot of my attention, but it is a must because actually what's happened lately is a few people, to be honest, been like, oh, you haven't put anything recently up on YouTube. I'm like, well, people actually watch it. So, there's a surprise there, a good surprise. So if I was to kind of give you so our top ones, obviously Facebook for ads, Instagram to appeal to people entering the speaking world, LinkedIn for business owners and entrepreneurs, because that's our market, and YouTube to keep our content and so we can be found. That would be the channels we would use.
Okay, got it. And I think, that's really nice to, just get your view, because I know other people are, particularly small businesses, and, I work with a lot of, as I know you do, what I'd call a lot of knowledge experts, coaches, consultants, etc. And they're effectively a one-man band often, or one-woman band. And there's only so many hours in the day, and they, don't have the luxury about picking every single channel. I have the same dilemma as well. I also use Facebook probably mostly. LinkedIn, haven't touched it really ever. To some people, are you insane? You're mad? Like, it's just, crazy, but it's just one place not gone to. And one thing I also want to just sort of comment on really is that one of the challenges with putting stuff out there, which is great, is you often don't get much feedback. You can put up a YouTube video, and just as you said, you're quite surprised when you actually finally get a message back, because you don't get that kind of gratification. So for someone that, works so hard and you put out there really carefully crafted, whatever it might be, podcast, video, product even, and you send it out there and you don't get replies back, don't be too alarmed. It's just the way the world is. And I don't know what the ratio is of views to comments, but it's really frigging low.
Yeah, exactly. One of my friends, she's quite a big influencer, and she often will build groups just to kind of show people how to do. And she says, until you get 1,000 people, I wouldn't even worry about anything at that point. Yeah. Like recently, I've had one woman that she's just signed up to work with us, and she met me 3 years ago. She's like, I've been following, now's the time. And you just don't know when someone's time is, or you really don't know like what people are actually consuming. So don't be disheartened. Absolutely, you're on the money there.
Yeah, that's really also an excellent point. I was actually chatting to somebody just the other day who was asking me for a fairly young business, asked me for some marketing sort of guidance, etc. And through his language, it appeared to me he was looking for, the one thing that was going to open the floodgates. And it's like, yeah, I wish it was like that. So, was really sort of emphasizing the point. No, think of touch points.
That works for marketing, but it doesn't work practically.
Yeah. And I think, just staying in the game over a long period of time, and people see that subconsciously is a huge advert for you, what you're doing. If you, do have a reasonably consistent, I know that you believe in having a consistent kind of message, maybe saying it in different ways. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you've got to keep the narrative going. Again, we talked about some of the big players out there, and one thing they do very well is control the narrative, and they're consistent with it. If you hear Gary Vee, always talks about his father's shop and the wine shop, and that's continuous. Like that's what he's been around for 12, 14 years now. Same story. But you don't get bored of it because he's evolving and he relates back to it. So it's important that you're consistent with the narrative, even if you evolve, even if you change, because that's what people buy into. That's what people will follow. That's what people will expect, of course. So
yeah, and I guess you gradually, that's a bad metaphor, hitting them with the same language, but you can penetrate. If you hear something once, it just evaporates very quickly. We do need to hear similar language again for us to consider it more deeply. So probably the last thing I want to sort of touch on, which is a big area in its own right, so perhaps we don't have to go too deep on this, but someone isn't experienced at speaking, perhaps has some fear around it, and I think most people do, at least in certain areas. I feel reasonably comfortable in some environments, but there's other environments where, for reasons I don't fully know, that I'm really reluctant and resisting that. So someone's there, what are the steps that they can take to help ease them into speaking more?
Yeah, I think you need to kind of really assess. So like nerves, things like that, the fear you're talking about, that doesn't just happen before you're about to get up and speak, right? That will happen days before. So it's important you develop something called the coping mechanism, or coping strategy when that kicks in. And there's various ways you can do that. understanding why kicks in, that's probably where you might need to get a bit of coaching. You might need to see a counselor or a psychologist, because if you take speaking, it's a big magnifying glass for our insecurities, and that happens to everybody when they get going. I'll get found out, I'm not worthy, I'll get it wrong, everybody will laugh at me, everyone will judge me. All these kind of things happens when people are getting going. And even actually when you evolve and go to bigger stages, right? Oh, I'm used to doing 50 in a room, I'm about to do 500, no one will hear me, I won't do. So then it's a continuous thing. There's no finishing goal for this, right? It's an evolution. So creating a coping strategy earlier on will help you feel less nervous, or be able to deal with it when you do get up to speak. The other thing, of course, to remember is no one can ever take away the authentic you, and no one can ever take that away from you except you. So that's a really important part here. And of course, having a massive why, like a why that drives you through the tough times, is another important part. And it doesn't have to be like, I want to change the world. It can be, I want to be a great dad, I want to be a great husband, I want to, impact the entrepreneurial community. That's me, right? That's my why. So every time I'm getting up, times are tough, I look at my kids' eyes, I go, who am I serving? Boom, get over yourself, and you're on stage. And then that it is important to have that thread of different coping strategies. Have a routine before going on stage. Don't just sit there, get nervous, get up, jump up, be ready backstage, do your thing. Again, there's so many things: NLP, EFT, mindfulness, meditation, visualization, power posing, which is a concept by Amy Cuddy, praying. It really just depends. But have a routine of it that you do consistently on a regular basis, affirmations, what's the other one? Anchoring, like find your way. And we have a booklet all about it. I can send it to you, Simon. People can download it.
Yeah,
when they listen to this, by all means. And that's a good way of dealing with that. And nothing can take away from good preparation. Practice it again. Like I do one-to-ones with people when we teach people a signature talk, and then like literally almost every time I get a call once we're finished going, this doesn't feel right. I'm like, okay, how many times have you practiced it? Oh, 2, 3 times. I'm like, it's not going to feel right until you've done it 50 times.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, at least.
So,
yeah.
Up your game, so if you're prepared and you've practiced, what that does, it creates space in your mind to be able to deal with things if they go wrong, because you know it so well, right? But if you don't know it very well and things are going wrong, then that's going to throw you. So having a coping strategy, having a solid routine before going on stage, really knowing your content inside out, that is what will make you stand out and be world class and get you those prolific clients and those gigs, because you are way above everyone else. That's what I would say.
Okay, I think that's brilliant. I mean, I was actually making a few notes there, but what really came out, and you actually summarized it really nicely at the end there, because I was going to ask you, you talked about coping strategy, but you then talked about so many different facets. It's probably a little bit overwhelming for some people, but at the heart of that, if there were two things, and I would have agreed with this as well, it's getting really clear on your content. So it inside, backwards, left, right, upside down. I think you mentioned, rehearse it 50 times. Yeah, and minimum. Some, I would say. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know in old days I wouldn't have done that, but for sure, for sure do it. And I don't know about you, it might be different, but I would practice the start. I don't know the number, 100 times, 200 times. I'll practice the end 100, 200 times. In the middle, not so much. I would know the chapters, the things I was going to go through. Let's say it's a long speech, it's an hour's long talk or something. Yeah. I would know the subject matter, and I would happily allow myself to ad lib around that. But the opening statement and closing statement, they were word for word. That's why, and that's when I got myself comfortable doing it. And if I went a bit off script and fumbled my way through the middle of it a little bit, so what? Not so bad. But I needed to have that really drilled in so that I could actually be in the room or wherever the occasion is to deliver and listen to people and actually have the mental capacity to deal with things that are going on, because it can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, and of course, I just want to say this: we're not about scripts; we're about structure. Like you said, we're about know where you want to go and get there, but it's not about word for word. Like you said, I'd say if you're to drill anything more and more, it'll be your sales towards the end. But remember, the whole thing is a sales pitch. So don't think of it as a section. But yeah, I think, a lot of people think, oh, do I need to script? No, 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 no. But do remember this, you should be able to do a presentation without slides. Like that's one thing we advocate. You should not need your slides to do what you need to do as well.
Yeah, and that's something I've been guilty of in the past. As a visual guy, I would definitely probably overuse slides, mostly for my own comfort, because of course I had a fear that I would, totally have a blank moment in front of 1,000 people. That's fairly not good thing to do. So that was for my benefit. And of course, later on, yes, I need those slides less and less. So excellent advice. I really like, was it a download or something you mentioned?
Yeah, I'll send that to you. We interviewed a variety of speakers and how they cope and how they prepare for speaking arrangements from big to small. So I'll send that to you, and anybody wants it, they can just download it from the podcast.
Yeah, perfect. I'll definitely include that. So I think we'll wrap it up there, Elliot. It's been awesome to connect. One last thing, we've had a few trials and tribulations actually making this event. So sometimes you just need to stick at it
Right.
and get it over the line and brush off the rehearsals. We didn't realize there were rehearsals at the time, but
Yes.
it got here in the end. So thank you so much for joining us.
My
I found it
pleasure.
very valuable, and other people will too.
Thank you, my man. See you
Excellent.
later.
So huge thanks to Elliot for joining us today for the talk. I hope you found that valuable. I know I did. I think there's 2 points there I particularly liked, and that was with regards to getting over the fear of speaking. And I think that's something that we can all kind of understand, and maybe we've all experienced at least at some point. And those 2 main points was a pre-stage kind of routine, and even if it's not stage, a pre-event routine, something that I don't really have and something that I should have. And if I was speaking to big audiences, then I would up my game there. That's something I need to look at. And number 2, which is perhaps obvious, but I know most people don't do it anywhere near enough, is just rehearse the arse out of it. And one thing I'd want to, actually 2 additional things I want to just add there, is when you're rehearsing, there's something that really worked for me. When I got it wrong in rehearsal, I would just keep going. That was important because I knew when I was going to be on stage or whatever the environment was, I might get it wrong out there. So I needed to learn how to deal with that too. So if you do kind of fumble your lines or forget what he's going to say in rehearsal, don't stop and start again, because you can't do that in the real world. Deal with it. Make a joke of the fact you've forgotten what he's going to say. If you've forgotten the punchline to a joke, apologize for it. It's rubbish, it's bad, but it happens. So I think that's a really good thing to kind of practice getting it wrong too, if that makes sense. And the last point there is find a way to actually have fun with it. So if you like engaging with people, don't like talking at them, then ask them questions, or if it is a sort of stage environment, pull them up onto the stage and do some sort of workshop with them. Do whatever you need to do to enjoy it. And if it's just a one-to-one meeting, but maybe it's an important one with a prospect, with a client, with a manager, with a boss, then, again, I think the same applies. Find a way that you can actually enjoy that interaction, and I think then it will go a lot better as well. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hope you got some value out of that, and I look forward to speaking to you again on the next one. Over and out. Chat to you soon. Bye for now.